that it is. So I know it will be soon. But I wonder if during that 10 years, it was a lack of hope that kept you from painting, and I wonder if there was an event or an individual who provided you with some spark of hope at the point that you started painting again. Could you see it in that frame that for the first time in 10 years you felt hopeful?
Well, I think that the 10-year period, I lived a life. In other words, I was living, I was surviving, let's say. Okay, so I was surviving, knowing, wishing that I could make a living from my art, but that was clearly not going to be possible. So the 10-year period is one of, I could pretend, I always try to be positive in my outlook on things. So I have a poster company, which is successful, but I realized one of the interesting things that I realized about artists is that when I had my job at the ad agency, I realized the reason I wanted to make money was not to be a great ad man. It was so I could so that I could afford to paint. So the artist has this dilemma of why do you want money? You don't want money, why do you want to have a job? The only reason why you have a job is so that you can do what you really want to do. And it was a revelation to me in looking at the film that I saw that. I was saying, why the hell did I go to ad agency, And I said, well, because I wanted to get out of it as soon as possible and get back into something. So the 10-year period, I learned a lot about life. I learned a lot about, I had a kid and I did all this kind of thing. But I don't think in the end anything would have prevented me from going back to painting. And what made it easier was that I didn't have to think that what I was going to paint, I would have to sell in order to, and I think that's it was really kind of lucky in the long run. God knows what I would have painted during that period. Maybe it would have been very minor just because I didn't have the feeling. I was so really, I was really depressed about the art part. But I got positive about the fact that I was able to make money making posters that went sold around the world. So, but if you're an artist, it's somewhere that is that inner necessity, and that's why I think that you should try to separate money from your art, and that's the only way I can. That's how I see it.
Can I answer something? You asked a really serious question before, and I think Bob probably has a hard time answering that. It's not completely in the film. Bob's biological father never called him his son. He'd always say, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Bob. And I think, as somebody who's your father, you always wanted to hear that. So that's something that is tough, I think, for Bob to answer, and maybe he didn't get that across, and maybe that answers your question. And the other part of your question was, the second part of your question was, did your father leave you anything? Bob's father was in the film when he was on his deathbed, and he left him an island in Maine that he lives on in the summertime by himself, with him and his wife. And they spend 3 months on the island, if they can, maybe 2. And they have no electricity. They have 16-foot tides around the island. You can only get on and off the island during high tide. And he goes there and he writes and he paints. And so maybe that's kind of why they call me Don Quixote of the art world. So I hope that answered your question.
What?
We have time for one more question.
You're the lucky man.
I'm curious if you think that the art world's, let's call it sort of lack of full appreciation for you is in any way kind of a retribution for you, sort of sticking your finger in their eye with the yes art sort of thing that you, or movement or event or however you want to characterize it that you described in the film.
Well, I'm glad you said that because people think I'm paranoid, but I know for a fact that the fact that I did this Yes Art show back in '65, this was a show in which I really defined myself, and I was called the anti-Warhol artist, and I was only 19 or 20, but the point was I felt that if a soup can be considered a major work of art, that in a way it meant that anything could be art, and that's why. And I was not really. I didn't feel that I was a developed artist at that time. I was working my way to be what I considered a developed artist, but when you saw that the commercial aspect, the crassness of the emphasis on what something sells for instead of what it is was, that's 1965. Now everything I did as a joke in that show was done supposedly seriously after that, including a live sculpture. We had a live sculpture at the Yes Art show, and 10 years later, Warhol had a live sculpture, and it made headlines all over New York. I was selling art by the pound. I don't think that has happened yet, but that could be the next thing, the next gimmick that the art world comes. And by giving out, I don't know if anyone remembers S&H green stamps. I don't know if I'm, all right, so I was, Warhol did a painting of an S&H green stamp. I was giving them out with a sale of art at the Yes Art show. I thought that was a little, and believe me, when I called it Yes Art, I put a positive spin on everything, and I continue to do that. But at the same time, I think I try to get a important message across in some of my art that is ignored only because they have this golden goose. And the golden goose is that just keep on going on with what sells, not with what is relevant. And I know I have only a second, but I want to say this. Contemporary art has been defined by the galleries and the museums as some kind of art, as some form of art. I'm a contemporary artist because I am painting today and probably painting a lot more than Jeff Koons, who claims that he brags about the fact that he has never learned to draw and he doesn't know how to paint, but he feels he's so attuned to art that he can dictate to another human being, and then he will sign that piece that he has dictated to. So this is kind of serious stuff. I like to keep everything, and I think that Murray Kempton said that Yes Art was an artistic joke, but very serious at the same time. So as I could go on, but I love these conversations after the film because people ask really by asking questions that I think are intelligent and that are really meaningful. I believe that there's an audience out there for my art eventually when it's allowed to be seen in a museum somewhere in this country. And so this is very fulfilling to me, and I always feel great because the questions are so great, and it means that people are thinking about what I'm thinking about, and I'm not alone. I'm no longer alone. And that's why I love this film, and it's why I love the film industry, because they are gonna they are the ones that don't censor. It is the galleries and the museums that do the censorship. And I say, the last thing I'll say, I don't worry about the US government censoring my work, because the galleries and the museums do it for them.
Thank you for 10 years well spent. I mean, really, we brought this man out into gave him public awareness, and you, my friend, this has been one of the great thrills of my professional career, meeting you, and God bless. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. He will be out in the lobby when it's over to
Thank
take
you
more
very much.
questions.
Hope you enjoyed the film. Thank you, the Angelika. We appreciate it. Have a good night.